Hey guys, what's going on? It's Mons here with another episode of Mons and More. Today I'm going to be doing something different. I'm surprised I haven't done it yet, being that I'm a car guy. I have been for a long time. I'm going to be focusing on the brand Dodge today. A lot of time you'll go through and you'll see articles or stuff like that, and it just kind of makes you wonder, what is the brand doing? What are they thinking? I'm going to kind of be criticizing them pretty hard today. Now, keep in mind, I'm a Dodge person. I've had a few Dodges back when, and even recently when I was looking at getting my new SUV, I was actually looking at a Durango. So I like the brand, but for the most part, there's a lot of things I think they need to focus and key in on. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go through. Again, I got my little setup here. Part of this idea came up with my new car and driver this month. I'm just reading through there as well as some conversation with some of the guys. But I'm going to go through and dissecting. So off to the side here, I got all my notes on my laptop. So just kind of hang in there with me as I veer off to the right real quick just to kind of look at my next point because I got a lot of stuff. Okay, so what we're going to do is just go through and talk about the lineup. All right, so right now the brand itself, they've got 5 cars. They've got the Dodge Journey, the Dodge Grand Caravan, okay? You've got the Charger, the Challenger, and the Durango. Those are basically the 5 cars that the brand has. Now going through here piece by piece, the Journey, that's basically, you could say that's their compact SUV. Most people, if you're going into the dealer, you're not going in for that car. Okay, now to understand Dodge, they've got a few brands. So you've got within the same dealer, they're not broken up in different locations. If you're going into the dealer, you're going to have Dodge, which is basically the vehicles we're talking about, Jeep, the Jeeps are there, the Chryslers are there, and then the Rams, which are their pickup trucks. So all 4 of those brands are going to always be in the same building. I'm talking about specifically, obviously, with Dodge. With the Dodge Journey, it's a compact SUV. There's a lot of vehicles in that class. You're not going to be going in, unfortunately, for that vehicle because it hasn't sold well. I was just kind of looking into a little bit just to get a bit better idea, to give you some ideas on it. Like I said, the vehicle starts at $23,000, so it's a good entry point, starting point for people coming in, but it's just not popular. The vehicle's been around for, I think this is the 13th model year it's been out now. All right. So in 147 months that the Dodge Journey has been on sale, okay, in 147 months, so that's 12 years and 3 months, only 11 times have they sold 10,000 units or more in a single month. Now, keep in mind, these figures I'm talking about are only within the U.S., okay? This is basically where I live, so this is the market where I'm focused on and discussing. The vehicle's available in Canada. I saw some figures there. I wasn't too concentrated on that. I'm just focused on U.S. figures and marketing when I'm kind of going through here talking about things. So you figure in all that time, they've sold 953,000 units. So they haven't even sold 1 million units. They average 64,000 units per year. So you can kind of go through and try to figure out, break that up by month. What is that? It's not a lot. I don't know why they've continued to kind of stick with the vehicle. At this point, like I said, 12, 13 years, and the vehicle's never been remodeled. That's a long time on one body, one design, one generation of a vehicle. So we're past the Journey. We know we're not going to be, that's really not much of an influential vehicle. So now the next one we're going to go down to is going to be the Dodge Grand Caravan. Now that vehicle starts at about $28,000. The vehicle itself has a long history. That vehicle's been around, I want to think, since like 83 or 84. It was the first minivan, true minivan. I'm not talking about like some of these other weird Japanese vehicles, or like you think of like the Volkswagen bus or some of these other ones. But true minivan in a sense. this was the first one. So this has a lot of history and heritage to it, but it's just fallen out of the market. Realistically, unless you're someone that has kids, realistically, this probably isn't a vehicle you're even going to bother looking at. So this is going to get dismissed real quick. When I went in, I was trying to figure things out, and they were trying to pitch me on the Pacifica, which is the Chrysler minivan, which is a much better looking vehicle. It's newer. You have a gas version, a hybrid version. So I don't understand why the Grand Caravan is outdated as it is, why it's even still available. Again, that current model, I think that's somewhere around 9, 10, 11 years old. Again, the complete styling is out of date versus the Pacifica. Right now, I think we're on like the fourth model year of this vehicle. So, okay, I don't want a minivan. No, show me. What else do you got? So this topic right here, this vehicle we're on now, this is the whole reason for this video and this rant and this mind-blowing thing that I can't figure out. Okay? We're talking about the Challenger. Now, me personally, I don't think the Challenger is a great-looking vehicle. Now, keep in mind, when I'm talking about the Challenger, the main things you have in that group are obviously you have the Camaro, the Mustang, and the Challenger. Those are your three pony cars. Me personally, I think probably the Mustang is the best looking of the three, then the Camaro, then the Challenger. The Challenger, it's too long, it's too boxy. Again, this is just my opinion, but that's the looks of the vehicle have nothing to do with it here. So we have the Challenger itself, okay? The Challenger, they have 13 different models, which basically range the car anywhere from $28,000 to $78,000, and that's just the base price. So that's not even factoring in, okay, well, I want, whether it's all-wheel drive, I want navigation, the bigger rims, the sunroof, whatever the case may be. Now you're factoring in all these options, these driver technologies for like the safety packaging and stuff like that. These are all add-ons. So you're $28,000 to $78,000. That's just the base vehicle. Now I don't even understand what all these packages are. All these models. So let me read them off to you. Okay, you've got the SXT and the GT. So those are your two 6-cylinder models. You can get them in rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. That's it. Okay. The next 11 models are all 8 cylinders, and they're all rear-wheel drive only. Then you have your RT. Now we're going back to a GT 50th anniversary, an RT Scat Pack, an RT 50th anniversary, an RT Scat Pack 50th anniversary, an RT Scat Pack Widebody, an RT Scat Pack Widebody 50th anniversary, an SRT HELLCAT, an SRT HELLCAT Widebody, an SRT HELLCAT Red Eye, an SRT HELLCAT Red Eye Widebody. Oh my god! All right. Okay. So, like I said, so we know the prices of those. Now I just don't understand why you need 13 models. Like, why do you have to have so many anniversaries, so many wide bodies? I don't know what a Scat Pack is. But so the main competition for the SRT, because that's the one that they with their 8-cylinder, that's the one that they focus on, is the Shelby Mustang GT 500. Okay, and then you have your Chevy Camaro ZL1. I'm gonna say the Camaro and the Mustang specifically, but as you go up in them. Like I said, once you get to the SRT Hellcat, the Demon, the Red Eye, and all these other ridiculous, obnoxious models, the Shelby Mustang GT 500 and the Chevy Camaro ZL1. Now, the Mustang, I don't have a problem with that vehicle because that pretty much, for the most part, is Ford's only performance vehicle. For a short bit, they had the Ford GT. That was like 2 years ago. That came out, and that was maybe like 200 or 300 models, real limited. All right, it's not a normal thing. You know what I mean? With the Camaro, I'm going to say with this ZL1 model, Chevy had the same problem there as Dodge is what I'm talking about in this video, right? I used to work at Chevy for about 1.5 years. And even before I worked at Chevy, I always wondered it, and I never really got an answer to it. The Chevy Camaro ZL1 is basically, you're looking in the range of about 700 to 800 horsepower, and starting prices around, I think it was like 80, 85, which is, again, same territory as what you're talking about here with the Challenger. You're putting it in the place of, why are you competing with the Corvette? I don't know. Like I said, with the Challenger here, with these upper cars where you're talking about the SRT Hellcat and all those other ones, you're talking at a base price of $78. You figure throw some options in there. I remember hearing at some points they were going up to close to about $100,000 for the car. Okay, now the other thing you have to keep in mind too, that depending on the model, it ranges basically anywhere from 800 to 1,000 horsepower. Keep that in mind, because this is going to come back later on. It doesn't make sense right now, but just keep in mind, 800 to 1,000 horsepower out of a Dodge Challenger for roughly about $80,000 to $95,000. So just keep this in mind. So the next car we're going to go to, okay, is the Charger. Now the Charger suffers from this a little bit from what I was just talking about with on the Challenger. Not as much though. The Challenger's got 13 models. The Charger has 6. Okay. The 6 models you have are the SXT, the GT. Again, those are your 6-cylinder models. Then you have an RT, a Scat Pack Widebody, and an SRT HELLCAT Widebody. Again, you could easily just narrow that down to 4 models if you want to say, okay, your SXT is your base entry model, the GT is your upgrade, maybe some packaging, some better wheels, okay. Your RT, that's your 8-cylinder, more some performance and visual upgrades as well on there. And then your SRT, that's your top model. I don't know what the purpose of the Scat Pack and the wide body models are in there. Again, the Charger ranges from about 30 to 72,000. So, okay, the 30 range right there, that's not bad. You figure that basically puts you at the, and again, this is a full-size car, so that kind of puts you in the same category as basically the Maxima. All right, the Maxima doesn't have performance upgrades. It's a good-looking car. The performance on the Maxima, I think, is right around like 315. So as a starting point, it's very comparable. Here's the thing that we're going to go through, right? And I just found this very interesting. This was actually one of the last notes I was curious about. Is if you go through and you look on here, well, a Charger SRT, right, what's the competition? So it's an 8-cylinder. Again, you're looking at about, well, what did we figure the horsepower was on here? About 707 horsepower out of the SRT Hellcat, right? Here's the competition. A Mercedes-Benz EMG, an E63 AMG, a BMW M5, an Audi RS7, and the Cadillac. Now, I'm curious, when you're talking about a Dodge, what person is going to say, you know what? I know I'm looking at a Mercedes and a BMW and a Cadillac and an Audi. You know, let me go check out the Dodge. No one's doing that. No one's doing that. It's a Dodge. I get if you want to have a performance model, you're not nearly in the same category as these other vehicles. Now, keep in mind, if you know me, you know I'm not a fan of German cars. Mercedes, no. BMW, no. Audi, no. Cadillac, again, no. They all make nice cars. So visually, the cars are beautiful to look at. They're gorgeous cars. The numbers, performance-wise, they put into them, wow. They sound like the muscle. But I have my own reasons because, again, I used to sell cars of why I don't like those cars. It's a completely different reason. But it's just, it's not in the same class. So, yeah, so here's the next part, right? So we're just talking about the Charger and the Challenger. The main point of it is, now, we went over the lineup. We've got the 5 cars, right? So you're not going to look at the Journey. That's not appealing to anybody, all right? Unless you have kids or anything, you're not looking at a Caravan. So you have your Charger and your Challenger. Do you want a coupe or a sedan? Because right off the bat, depending on which one you want, the other one's getting rolled out. If you're looking for a sedan, the Challenger's out. If you want a coupe, the Charger's out. And then you have the Durango. The Durango, I'd say, is probably the only vehicle in the lineup that is pretty good. Sure, it could probably use some tweaks, but overall, price-wise, model-wise, performance-wise, it's not crazy. There's not anything that really makes you say, yo, there's issues here, let me dig in. But why? So we went from 5 cars down to 3 cars real quick, because the other 2 are written off. I don't understand why the brand is focusing on making cars at 700 horsepower, 800 horsepower, 1,000 horsepower, when these vehicles, they have a high price market. So you're focused in on a market that's basically, even if you get one at a deal, right? So maybe you get it down to 70,000 or whatever the case may be, or if it's at 100,000, you get it down to 88 to 90. That's a very, very small market. That's a very select buyer. I don't understand why you're focusing on that. Like I said, again, you're in the same category as elite muscle European cars, which you don't belong in that market anyways. I just don't understand why they're not focusing on the development of the rest of the brand. Now, a couple of years, I think it was about 2-3 years ago, somewhere, I don't remember the exact timing, they got rid of the Dodge Dart. So they no longer have a compact car. They got rid of the Dodge Avenger. They no longer have a mid-size car. The trucks, that's the own brand, okay. They got rid of the Viper. I think that was canceled. I think it was 2016, 2017. So that flagship car that the brand has been, that it's been a staple for since 89 when it was a concept, 92 when it began building. There's that part. They don't have an entry-level sports coupe. Something like that. So focus on building other cars to bring people into the showroom, and then they can upgrade themselves. That's where all this is basically, this is my frustration. There's a way to do it. They can definitely do it. That's what they just have to focus on. Now, here's the thing, right? I understand why they may not want to do that, because let's take example. Let's pause. Let's go back to Ford and Chevy. I'm not sure if people have realized this. Now, again, it probably came about 3-4 weeks ago at work. Customer brought in a Chevy Malibu, and him and my boss were talking about it, and they were saying, yeah, parts will be available. And again, it's a routine car. It's not a problem. But they didn't realize that the cars aren't made anymore. With Ford and Chevy, they cut all their cars. So if you go into a Ford dealer, there's no Fiesta, there's no Focus, there's no Fusion, there's no Taurus. All those cars are gone. The C-Max, that's gone. They're all gone. The only car that Ford is keeping is the Mustang, because that's basically their staple. That's been around since the late 60s. If you go to Chevy, pretty much the same thing over there. They got rid of the Sonic. They got rid of the Spark. They got rid of the not the Cobalt, the Cruze. They got rid of the Cruze. They got rid of the Malibu. They canceled the Impala. They canceled the SS. Now the Vet, obviously, again, same thing. They're keeping their Vet. The new 2020 Vet is just out now. I actually saw one. It's a good-looking car. The Camaro, I'm not sure what's going on with that one. That one I haven't read about. I think that might still be out there. And that's, again, that'll be more into another video. But again, basically they just have their 2 sports cars. So the reason that Ford and Chevy are doing this is because, everybody was saying, why are they canceling these cars? It's because of things that are happening with politics, that they're not making money. Well, yes, it absolutely has to do with money. It has nothing to do with politics. If you do your research and you read enough articles, And this is no secret. This is going back years and years and years. This is an open fact if you follow the car manufacturers. Again, I do car sales. Is there's no profit in the cars. So when these manufacturers, when they're making these cars, they only make, I think their profit margin is somewhere in the range of about 8 to 11%. Okay, so versus if you look at their profit margin in their SUVs and their pickup trucks, their profit margin in those vehicles is ranging right around 85 to 90%. So why are they going to continue to build vehicles where they're not making any money versus why not focus on vehicles where where the money isn't even a problem? So that's why Chevy and Ford got rid of their cars. So if it's about the money, okay, fine, then that's what's the money about. I still disagree with it. Because here's the thing. I'm a car person. Do I have an SUV now? Yes, I have to. Because, again, my circumstances, I can't just buy a car for me anymore. You know what I mean? I got my 3 little monsters. I got Marvel. I got Kona. You know what I mean? We take trips. We can pack up the car. It's not a problem. So in an SUV, that can be done. You can't necessarily do that in a car. But as soon as I am able to go back to a sedan, I look forward to doing it. But if I'm looking for a car, right, or even if I just decide, hey, you know what, I want to buy a second car, Ford has nothing to offer me. And I'm not talking about used cars, what's in their used car department. I'm talking about new cars. Ford and Chevy, they have nothing to offer. There's no city commuter car, which is basically like a Spark or the Sonic or like the Fiesta would be. There's no entry level compact car like the Focus or the Cruise. There's no mid-size car. There's no Malibu. There's no Fusion. There's nothing. So now it's like, okay, well, you have no cars. I don't want a truck, or I'm trying to get out of it. So right off the bat, I'm out the door. So that's where, like I said, Dodge is kind of in the same situation, because if someone's coming in and saying, hey, people don't always necessarily know about the brand they're walking into. I'm looking for a car. All right, I've got a Charger. That's too big. Okay, do you have anything else? I got the Challenger. No, it's the same size and it's 2 doors. That doesn't work. You know what I mean? So if someone is set on going into a new, Dodge is in the same situation where they have nothing to offer. So that's part of the problem. Focus on expanding the brand and making the most out of it, so you have things to offer people. Okay, so with that being said, and I'm gonna swing back a little bit to that now. Now here we are. Now I just saw something like the Viper, right? Let me just confirm what I'm talking about here. Yeah. Okay. So yes, I think that Dodge should definitely do something and focus on filling in some of those little holes, but they're not. I'm going to get to that. I kind of have a thought that where I would plan out to kind of what you could do to get the lineup to look like. The tools are there, but that's just going to be on pause for a moment. So the next point is going back to, like I said, what I was talking about with the Charger and the Challenger. Well, they're bringing the Viper back. So it's either supposed to be coming out towards the end of this year or possibly the beginning of next year. It's going to be a 2021 model. All right, cool. And it's a good-looking car. My problem with it is if you go through in here, look at the specs, what they're expecting for the vehicle to look like. They're saying that it's not going to have a 10-cylinder engine in it anymore. It's not going to be the iron block V10. It's always been like a big 8-liter or an 8.3, something like that. It's been a monster. It's going to be a V8. It's going to be an aluminum engine, so they're bringing that down. It's going to be starting right around the $90,000 mark, okay? And they're figuring for the standard model. Now, if you're a Viper person, okay, the standard coupe is the GTS. Usually, that's how they've gone that direction, and the standard convertible has always been the RT. That's generally what they've called the models to differentiate between the two. So you're saying it's going to be around 550 horsepower, roughly right around $90,000. The convertible is expected to be the Viper upon release, followed the year later probably by the coupe at that time. Do you see the problem with the numbers I just told you? The Viper is going to be priced at $90,000 with 550 horsepower. Meanwhile, you have your Challenger priced at $80,000 to $90,000. Let's just say you load it up with the options, $90,000 to $95,000 with 1,000 horsepower. You're competing against yourself, and that's exactly what the Camaro did with the Corvette. It cut into the brand supercar. I don't understand. I hope what they do to kind of bring some sense back to themselves, because having 13 models is completely nonsense. I hope once the Viper comes out, they cut those models and they just stick with a regular SRT capped at, 525, something like that. You know what I mean? Because really, you don't need much more than that. And if you want something more than that, then that's where you say, okay, I got to make the jump to the Viper. I think that's what realistically they need to do. So, yeah. So that was the main thing of like I said, with the rant about the Challenger specifically. The Charger had a little bit of piece of that leading into the Viper, because it makes no sense. You're competing against yourself. Now, like I was saying previously on here, is if you look into the what the brand can do to further develop itself, you say, all right, so what gaps does it have that they aren't currently filling? They don't have a compact car. They do not have a mid-size car. They don't have a entry performance car, because keep in mind, the Charger and Challenger, they both start roughly right around $29,000-$30,000. So you figure an entry performance car, and I'm saying sports car, like a coupe, something like 23, 24, something like that, whatever the case may be. Just something that's fun to get people in the door. And then, like I said, the Journey, that's got to be completely remodeled, because that car is not helping the company at all. It's not doing anything for the company. So the ways that you can do this is, well, you have partnerships with people. Specifically, Alfa Romeo. That's the big one. Now, they've had the partnership with Alfa Romeo, I want to say, since 2017, 2018. Alfa Romeo, if you're not familiar with them, check them out, Google them. There's a chance you may have seen one of their cars on the road and not known what it was. They've only been here for about 4 years. 3 years. I've really liked the brand from the beginning, from what I know. They're Italian. Basically, to understand the ladder, okay, you have Fiat. Fiats are not that great. Then you have Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo, they're basically at the same level in your category of Audi, Mercedes, BMW, Cadillac, Lexus. So they're going to be in that same category right there. Again, it's just they're Italian. So you have your Alfa Romeo. That's basically they would be the right there. Then Maserati. Maserati is basically going to be the upscale level. So they're going to have some more luxuries, more performance out of them. And then obviously the king on top is right here, Ferrari. Fiat owns all of them. So it's basically the Italian family. So Dodge has that relationship. Now, the main thing I'm talking about with this is in the Alfa Romeo Giulia and the Stelvio. The Giulia is their mid-size sports sedan, and then the Stelvio is their compact SUV. Both of those vehicles offer two engines, which is going to be either the base one is a 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder, 280 horsepower. So it's got pickup to it. I drove one. I was trying to get one of my last car, but again, when you have a stellar deal on a lease, that's when I went the route, and then I got my TLX. So it was all about the savings in there and what made sense. But you figure a 2-liter turbo, 280 horsepower, and the fuel economy was something like, it was like 27 in the city, and I want to think like 34, 35 on the highway. So here's the thing. You could basically say, you can use that in a few different vehicles depending on what class the vehicle is and what the performance and the cost and things like that. Now, I've figured it out and I've mapped it out, but I'm going to touch base with that. I just don't get why Dodge isn't, again, that is something you have root to. You have an engine. It's a partnership. Okay? Infiniti had partnerships with Mercedes. Mazda has had in relationships with Ford. Mazda had one with Dodge. Dodge has had one with Mercedes. So you have these partnerships to try to get something to help your brand, and depending on what it is, maybe offer the other brand something else. So it's there, use it. The chassis alone, if they use the chassis, I was reading an article, they could have used the Giulia chassis on possibly the next generation Charger, Challenger, and potentially the Jeep Grand Cherokee. Now, I can understand maybe why they turned it down on the Jeep Grand Cherokee, because being an SUV, as rugged as those vehicles are or can be, you don't want to have a softer, lighter chassis and frame that can potentially cause issues depending on who's using the vehicle. All right, so I can go with that. On the cars, easily, with the Charger and the Challenger, if they had made some minor adjustments and tweaks to it, they could have easily done it so you use that frame, you do something to lengthen it a little bit, it's still usable, and you easily save yourself 300 to 400 pounds in the frame. 300 to 400 pounds, well, that's why, that's what everything's all about, fuel economy right now. So you could have done it. But again, they chose not to. And then, so there's more things here with the rumors. I was only aware of 2 of them, and then I came across a third one. The third one I had to look into. That the Dodge is supposedly considering bringing back the Dodge Magnum. Now, if you don't know what the lineup looks like, go to Dodge.com and take a look at the lineup. You'll see the Dodge Charger, that's the sedan. You'll see the Dodge Challenger. The Challenger is basically a 2-door version of the Charger. That's pretty much all it is. So the Magnum is a wagon version of the Charger. They previously had the vehicle out. It was out for about 4 or 5 years. I think it was from like 2006 to 2011 or 2012. It was out for, again, it ran its course for a generation, but after that, it disappeared. It didn't work. Supposedly, there's rumors they're considering bringing it back. I have a picture of that for you. Then there is, which one? There's the Dodge Rampage. I had never heard that one. I actually had to look this up. Basically, it's Dodge's version of what the old El Camino was. So basically saying, take the Dodge Challenger, okay, the coupe that it is, and you just cut out the back. So you would basically have a pickup truck, sort of similar to what the Subaru Baja was back years ago. And that thing was a little bit weird looking. And then one other one supposedly is that they're considering the Dodge Barracuda. Now, again, I don't know if the Barracuda if that's just a rumor and that's just a popular name from the 70s. I don't think they would consider bringing that back. Could they? I don't know. It's Dodge. They could mess it up and somehow. I looked at the images and you're going to see it. If you look at it, it looks like one of 2 things. Either a redefined next generation version of what the Challenger could become, or it looks like Dodge trying to make the Dodge lines almost like from a Camaro. That's kind of what it looks like. But again, they're focusing on these other things where, again, the Barracuda, another performance vehicle, well, how are you going to squeeze that in. It's almost the same car, unless that is a under unless you're using it as an entry performance vehicle, then okay, which is kind of what I discussed. So if you go through here, right, in going through here, the potential lineup, you could do something like this, okay? So if you looked at a compact car, if you didn't want to do both, right? If you don't want to do both the compact car and a mid-size car, I get that. I have no problem with that. So what I'd say to do is skip the mid-size car, go with the compact car. All right, that gets you a starting price right around 21,000, somewhere in there. That's where a lot of those cars seem to be. Basically, anywhere from about 18 to 22 is a range as an entry point for a compact vehicle. Now, the Neon was very successful based on the brand's current status in terms of aggressive looks and performance. The Neon I don't think would work. I'm just using the name Avenger because that was the last that was in this past generation, and it's a more aggressive name than Neon. There are other names that have been used on other cars, but there's nothing that's really super aggressive that would fit this lineup. The Avenger is the most viable option at this moment, unless they decided to come out with a new model. You could easily do something, basically create some options, right? So you have a starting point of around 20,000. As you go through your models, you can have your top model be priced out at about 32,000, okay? And then you basically have 4 models. You'd have an SE, which is your base entry-level model, and then you have an SXT, which is a slight upgraded model. Both of those vehicles could have roughly about 160 horsepower. Then you'd have another model, which would be a GT. That would be, again, an upgraded model. You'd have a larger engine in there, right around 200 horsepower. Again, probably bigger wheels in there, some more standard options and more features. And then you could have your SRT model, just like back years ago they had the SRT4. Well, in this SRT model, this is where we're going now, comes into play that 2.0 liter, 280 horsepower engine out of the Alfa Romeo. So that's one spot right there where that engine could be used, and that fills that slot. That's pulling people into the brand. Now, if we go to your next slot would basically be then be going to the bigger cars, right? So if we figure the Dodge Charger, the Dodge Challenger, and whether they do the Magnum or not, the Magnum would be an existing car. You're just changing that back section to create a wagon back instead of a trunk area. So whether they do that or not, but for all of them, like I said, I wouldn't keep the HELLCAT model. I would cut them out, cap off at basically your SRT, so you're not competing with the Viper. That's the last thing you want to do is compete with yourself. And then on these cars, now the Charger entry-level model is a 3.6 liter V6, 293 horsepower. The Challenger is the same engine at 305. So you have those. You can stick with those engines if you want, or something you could do, you could, in the next generation vehicle, you take out these 6 cylinders and you put in the Alfa Romeo 2.0 liter 4-cylinder turbo, your 280 horsepower. Now, I was having this conversation with my dad, and he was like, well, see, here's the problem is you can't necessarily do that, or you shouldn't do that just because, you have to consider weight. And I said, okay, so you look at it, the difference in weight between an entry-level Charger and an entry-level Giulia is, I think it was, what was it? I want to say it was like 150 pounds or 200 pounds or something like that. So it's very minimal. So it's not that that engine wouldn't be able to handle the weight, because a couple 100 pounds isn't really going to be much of a difference. That's number one. Number two, if you use the frame from the Alfa Romeo and put it on that car, well, there's your 300 to 400 pounds you're going to be saving, number one. Or I'm sorry, that's number two. And number three, the engine itself will save you that weight. Because you have to think how big that 3.6 liter V6 engine is to go from a 3.6 to a 2-liter turbo. So you're saving probably, I'd say maybe about 100 pounds in the engine, and you're losing 13 horsepower. You're not going to note that. That's a trade-off. It's going to be almost the same. The only question is obviously what's the torque in there. I think it would still work though. So you can do that all across. Now coming down here, like I said, in regards to, I would suggest they should have another coupe. Now the name I've used for this entry-level compact coupe would be the Stealth, bringing back a name from the 80s and 90s. Revive the name, bring it back. It was very popular. It was right in there with some of the Mitsubishis at that time, the 3000 GT and the Eclipse that some people saw on there. But you could go do something, you figure have the starting price right around 24, 25,000, and then based on your different models and your optional equipment, max it out right around 37, 38. You could have an SXT GT model, basically right around 200 horsepower. So that wouldn't be a problem. Because again, 200 horsepower is still good. Depending on the size of the vehicle, it shouldn't be a problem. And then you offer a performance model, which is your SRT, and then boom, there you are at 280 horsepower, and you're right there. And if you want anything beyond that, at some point, knowing Dodge, they may come out with a higher model. Or again, that's where you make the jump up to the Challenger. It's just something for you to think about. Now, in regards, going back to before when we were talking about the Dodge Journey, how that vehicle is not doing well at all. I was going back and I'm trying to think what are some different names you could do. Obviously got to redesign the vehicle. The vehicle doesn't really have any appeal. If you look at the Journey and you put that next to the Durango, there's no appeal whatsoever. It's like, why aren't they doing I don't care if it's a smaller vehicle. Take the Durango design and shrink it down to the Journey. Just do the same thing. And just tweak it. Just do that. But the Journey's not working. Now, I thought saying, hey, go back to the Dodge Nitro name. Now, the Nitro didn't sell very well. It was basically the same vehicle as the Jeep Liberty. So it was a twin of itself. There were different versions, but it's just I'm just picking a name just for the purpose of the segment. But you could go back in that direction. And again, you've got a few options. You can go into, again, your entry-level SXT. That's pretty much Dodge's staple right there. You put it in right around 170, 175 horsepower. You have whatever features on there. You go from there. Then you could have your middle model, which would be the Citadel. All right, that's basically of all the models that the Durango offers. That's kind of like your number 4 out of 7. So you could go with that name, the Citadel. Again, upgraded performance at that point, right around 210, 220. Some more features like the manufacturers generally do. And then from there, then again, you could go one of two ways. Now, you could go, again, do your SRT model, because that's their performance. They always offer that. Do your SRT model, you could do the 280 horsepower engine, which is the engine from the Giulia. Or you could do the 3.6 liter V6 that they use in either the Charger, the Challenger, or even the Durango. And depending on how it's tuned, you're right around anywhere from basically 293 to 305 horsepower. So that's option there too. The only part where it gets tricky is, keep in mind we're talking about an SUV here. So even though it's a compact SUV, it's still an SUV. So while the Alfa Romeo engine will offer you the performance, and it's definitely going to help offer the economy, it's an SUV. So if people want to tow, that engine may not necessarily be a good idea for towing. So if you go with the V6, like in that 295 to 305 range, well, the performance, obviously, we know is there, and it will offer towing, because that engine is used in the Durango, and you tow with it, and it's used in a bunch of the Jeeps too. So there's towing there too. So you could go with either one of those ways. Then you'd have, obviously, your SUV, the midsize SUV with the Durango. The Durango, after reviewing it, I would say instead of, cut it down from maybe like 6 or 7 models down to, again, like 4, maybe 5. I think Model-wise, they have kind of one or two too many. Other than that, the vehicle I think is pretty much fine as is. I wouldn't really adjust too much there. And then obviously you have your Viper. So I think that's really what should be done. They have a lot of things to do to address the lineup. Again, you could go with your entry-level model based on what they like to do. You figure entry model is rumored to be right around 550 horsepower. Then if you go up to a performance, so let's say they have an SRT now, so now that's going to be what they're going to do to beef up the car. That could put them in like the 725 to 800 range. And if they like to offer as many models for the Viper as they do the Challenger, they could dig deep and they could go back to a 90s ACR model. The ACR, you could range anywhere from about 850 to 925. And if you wanted to go really crazy, proven on these Demon Red Eye Hellcats, they could have a rare top-notch model, which they could call a Venom, and that could be right around 950 to 1100. But again, that's just kind of for fun, icing on the cake. But Dodge has a lot to do. Like I said, the brand, I like them. The Charger is a good looking car. The Durango is a good looking car. The Challenger I don't like. It's always had a square, weird look to it. The the Journey, not a good looking vehicle. It's okay, but it doesn't sell. It's kind of it's run its course. The Caravan, if you don't got kids, you're not going to go look at that. So they've got things that they got to do. They got to work on. A lot of their vehicles are way past their prime. The Jeep Grand Cherokee is, I think that's about 11, 12 years old. So that's due for a brand new redesign next year. The Charger, you figure at this point, the Charger is probably on its 8th or 9th year. The Challenger has been around since like 2008, 2009. So it's 12 years on this body. A lot of the vehicles are pretty much at a stale point where they're due. So it's just gonna be what do they do? I don't know. You guys tell me what you thought. But like I said, they got some things they got to do. My next ones that I will be doing in a similar video are definitely going to be shorter. I just had a lot of issues with Dodge. I'm going to be talking about Chevy. I'm going to be talking about Ford. And I will definitely be talking about Honda and Acura because they like to get kudos for things that is no-brainers. It blows my mind. So finish this one up. Stay tuned and wait for the other ones to come. I'll see you in a bit.